Across the United States, the traditional real estate market has officially locked into a systemic gridlock. With mortgage rates hovering stubbornly above 6.5%, retail buyers are completely paralyzed, and legacy banking institutions are sitting on trillions of dollars in illiquid, over-leveraged commercial paper. But while retail investors panic over housing affordability, elite solopreneurs are utilizing an entirely different liquidity matrix. The legacy financial matrix relies on a simple mechanism, keeping you trapped inside centralized mortgages, high intermediary fees, and rigid compliance layers that extract up to 30% of your asset appreciation. They control the ledger, the interest rates, and the collateral. If you continue playing by their rules, your capital is subjected to continuous invisible leakage through inflation and systemic banking bottlenecks. In this opening chapter of our Advanced Sovereign series, we are going to expose the exact engineering framework known as the Sovereign Asset Blueprint. We will dismantle how high-ticket solopreneurs bypass traditional bank financing altogether, deploying decentralized liquidity pools and bare metal equity to acquire high-yield assets with zero intermediaries and a sub-5% tax velocity. Think about how a conventional real estate purchase works. You subject your financial history to endless underwriting scrutiny, sign thousands of pages of legacy legal text, and hand over complete control of your deed to a corporate banking conglomerate. You call it ownership, but mathematically, you are merely renting your collateral from institutional gatekeepers who can adjust your risk parameters at will. The sovereign alternative is built on architectural autonomy. Instead of relying on centralized mortgage brokers, we deploy smart contract pipelines and decentralized liquidity protocols that execute trustless peer-to-peer asset acquisition. By leveraging bare metal equity structures, your capital remains entirely within your cryptographic perimeter, completely immune to legacy banking freezes or arbitrary credit contractions. What is bare metal equity? It is the direct tokenization and sovereign holding of hard asset collateral without corporate layers or title insurance middlemen. By utilizing multi-sig cryptographic vaults and automated webhooks linked to real-world asset protocols, you secure fractionalized ownership of high-yield real estate assets directly on-chain, achieving a net operating margin that traditional investors consider mathematically impossible. Managing decentralized liquidity structures manually would introduce human error and administrative drag. That is why high-ticket solopreneurs integrate autonomous AI agents into their acquisition stack. These synthetic asset managers monitor global interest rate fluctuations, automated yield opportunities, and cross-border regulatory shifts in real time, executing rebalancing protocols in fractions of a second. When capital moves across a decentralized mesh network, traditional geographic borders and capital controls become entirely obsolete. Your funds are no longer trapped in a single regional bank vulnerable to localized liquidity crunches. Instead, your assets are distributed across resilient, cryptographic validation nodes that ensure instantaneous settlement and absolute transactional privacy. Every intermediary in the legacy financial system takes a cut, not just once, but perpetually through origination fees, maintenance costs, and hidden escrow charges. By implementing the Sovereign Asset Blueprint, you eliminate the middleman completely. This reduction in administrative friction translates directly to an 88% net margin retention on your real estate and digital yield generation. We have established the core vulnerability of the traditional housing market and introduced the foundational mechanics of bare metal equity. But acquiring the asset is only the first step. In the next part of this blueprint, we will deploy the advanced software stack required to automate your cross-border liquidity routing. Stand by for part 2. To operationalize the Sovereign Asset Blueprint, you do not need a massive legal team or a traditional banking portfolio. You only need a hyper-specific software core. Hardhat and Foundry act as the smart contract development environment, Chainlink provides decentralized price feeds for collateral valuation, and multi-sig cryptographic vaults handle self-custody execution on a permanent loop. Let us look at the 12-month compounding projection. While retail buyers remain locked out by 6% mortgage hurdles and high intermediary costs, a sovereign solopreneur deploying bear market liquidity scales their asset holdings with near zero administrative leakage. Your capital compounds efficiently, accelerating your timeline to absolute financial independence. The legacy banking structure is obsolete. Spending your life navigating stringent underwriting requirements, paying inflated origination fees, and trading your biological energy for a heavily taxed, centralized asset is a high-risk strategy. True stability belongs to the system architect who owns the underlying code and the direct cryptographic deed. Remember the primary objective of this architecture: buying back your absolute time. Capital is simply stored human energy. By leveraging smart contract protocols instead of bureaucratic intermediaries, you insulate your personal life from administrative friction, giving you the ultimate luxury of modern civilization: complete autonomy. While traditional real estate investors are bogged down managing tenant disputes, negotiating with legacy brokers, and dealing with interest rate shocks, you are moving with exponential velocity. Your sovereign asset engine allows you to pivot, reallocate, and scale your portfolio in minutes, permanently bypassing the traditional market gridlock. You no longer need validation from the mainstream banking matrix. You don't need an institutional mortgage approval to build an empire of hard assets. When your smart contracts execute autonomously in the cloud, generating secure, unassailable yield on autopilot, your on-chain ledger becomes your absolute sovereign validation. The blueprint has been fully exposed across this presentation. You have the structural framework, the tools, and the cryptographic shields. The illusion of safety inside the legacy banking trap is officially broken. Subscribe to this channel, activate your notification protocol, and write "Sovereign" in the comments below to lock in your execution matrix. We have built the ultimate framework for modern asset sovereignty. From exposing real estate market gridlocks and deploying bare metal equity to bypassing banking intermediaries entirely, you now hold the complete blueprint to permanently decouple your wealth from centralized control. But as your sovereign asset portfolio scales and your capital channels overflow, you will face an entirely new macroeconomic landscape governed by international routing, multi-jurisdictional residency shifts, and the transition from a digital solopreneur into a global asset allocator. The journey into absolute independence never stops. To ensure your digital infrastructure remains completely bulletproof before the next systemic shift occurs, you must master the core automation layer. Click on the video appearing on your screen right now, where we break down the exact autonomous operational frameworks to fuel your enterprise. To execute decentralized real estate acquisition without tripping legacy banking compliance alarms, your routing infrastructure must be bulletproof. Instead of relying on manual bank wire transfers, we deploy automated webhook pipelines connected to multi-sig smart contracts. When an asset acquisition target is identified, capital flows instantly across protocol nodes without human bottlenecks or arbitrary clearance delays. Traditional underwriting takes weeks of invasive paperwork and bureaucratic friction. The sovereign alternative replaces human underwriters with cryptographic verification algorithms. These protocols audit title history, evaluate on-chain liquidity depth, and execute the final deed transfer autonomously, ensuring absolute transparency and eliminating title insurance monopolies. Let us look at the financial mechanics of sovereign asset holding. When you strip away intermediary management fees, property tax bloat, and legacy escrow costs, your net operating yield expands dramatically. While standard retail investors struggle to net 3 or 4% after expenses, a bare metal structural setup locks in a pristine net margin exceeding 80%. The greatest systemic vulnerability in conventional real estate is counterparty risk. Holding your wealth inside institutions that can freeze accounts, alter lending terms, or collapse during macroeconomic shocks. By moving your collateral onto decentralized, self-custodied ledgers, you eliminate counterparty risk entirely. Your assets remain under your direct cryptographic key management. Beyond direct acquisition, the sovereign asset blueprint allows you to tokenize your existing equity and deploy it into high-yield automated DeFi liquidity pools. Your real estate collateral doesn't just sit idle. It generates continuous micro-yields on an ongoing loop, compounding your capital base without requiring active management or tenant headaches. Traditional real estate is geographically anchored and painfully slow to liquidate. If regulatory or tax environments shift unfavorably in your jurisdiction, moving physical property is practically impossible. In contrast, tokenized bare metal equity offers complete cross-border portability, allowing you to restructure your asset perimeter globally in a matter of minutes. Central banks continue to devalue fiat currencies through unconstrained monetary expansion, destroying the purchasing power of traditional savings accounts. Hard assets held within a sovereign architectural framework provide absolute inflation immunity. Your capital is anchored to cryptographic scarcity and physical utility, shielding your wealth from systemic currency debasement. When you implement this automated infrastructure, your role shifts permanently. You are no longer trapped managing tenant disputes, negotiating with traditional brokers, or deciphering complex legal compliance documents. You become the pure system architect, spending your time optimizing protocols while your software stack handles capital operations. We have now mapped out the complete structural transition from retail paralysis to sovereign asset control. You understand how to bypass banking gatekeepers, structure bare metal equity, and root capital with algorithmic precision. But maximizing this framework requires our final operational sequence. In the final block of this blueprint, we will assemble the master tool stack, reveal the exact compounding math of the sovereign portfolio, and drop the ultimate closing hook. Stand by for part 3 as we finalize your escape from the legacy financial matrix.